Welcome to the Tactical Dent Tech Podcast. You are now part of a small underground movement of dent technicians from all over the world. We are on a mission to change our industry with innovation, intelligence, and skill. But because we don't rely on an insurance company to steer customers our way, we need to do things different. We need to do things smarter. We do that through a network of technicians that we call the Tactical Tech Movement. Now let's get this revolution started.
Hey, what's up, everybody? John Hiley here with the Tactical Dent Tech Podcast. I want to just bring a little message to you today, kind of a little story that I was thinking about this morning, and I'm starting to kind of do a new thing. Whenever I think about stories, I started a note in my phone where I can actually write down and remember later on exactly what I was thinking about. So I was actually chilling out, was after going to the gym today, and it occurred to me that I had a really good story and almost like a warning for a lot of the folks out there. Make sure everything's hooked up here. A warning for a lot of the folks out there who essentially you're doing business with a big company, and you got to be careful because a lot of these companies will hold people basically hostage. And I'm going to explain a little bit more in detail about that, but I'm just going to give you a little bit of a backstory. So we got a client who we're redoing this guy's website. He literally has a website that looks like it probably stepped out of the 90s. I mean, it's maybe late 90s, early 2000s type website. It's doing really well, but in a sense, he knew that he needed to make a change at some point just because the image of it in general was very, very old and very outdated. So he didn't want that to be the image of his company, right? So we get this brand new website set up. We get it all ready to go, all ready to rock. And we come to find out that his previous domain name was purchased and bought through the Yellow Pages, yellowpage.com. I'm thinking, well, that might not be a big deal, but, yellowpage.com is a shitty business model now, and it's kind of a shitty company. I mean, I'd say they're right up there with Yelp as far as being very, very shitty, trying to hold you hostage, trying to put you in situations where you need to pay them, or they're just going to fuck you over in some way or another. And that's exactly what's happening right now. So apparently they still put you in contract for your website. I'm here to tell you, man, if you guys go and buy a website from somebody and they want to put you under a contract, go tell them to go fuck themselves. Because the bottom line is, man, the only contract needed between you and another company in this day and age is that the company does their fucking job. And you won't fire them because they're not doing their job. That's the only contract needed. And see, now we're walking into something that's like the old way of doing business versus the new way of doing business. And thank God for reviews and thank God for competition, because this is the new way of doing business. The new way of doing business is if you don't serve me, then I fire you. The old way of doing business is I'm going to hold you hostage by making you sign a contract with me, and if you breach that contract, I'm going to steal your shit. Okay? So companies like the Yellow Page can operate in the old way of doing business, but that is exactly why these assholes are rightfully dying. Okay? Absolutely, and no doubt, and I guarantee you, if Yelp wasn't an Apple corporation and didn't have the ability as well to do the things that they're doing and landing the big deals that they're landing, and they didn't have a good back end, they would be dead in the water as well. I still hope that they die, because the bottom line is they literally try to hold a gun to your head and say, if you don't do things or you don't pay us this much money, we're going to get rid of your reviews, we're not going to approve as many, and you're not going to get any business. I'm so glad that Yelp has not really caught on over here on the East Coast. I mean, I don't even focus on getting reviews there. I do, but I don't focus on that any longer. Now on the West Coast, unfortunately for the guys out there, they're Yelp dependent, and God, I hope that's not a business model that works its way through the entire country. It's just a horrible company to deal with. Like, again, they try to hold you hostage. They try to basically, you don't do it our way, we're going to delete your shit. And on top of that, we're going to penalize you by taking legit reviews and shit canning them. But if you pay us $500 a month, we'll we will allow you to keep your reviews, which is it's a new way of extortion. I want to say that like the mob used to come into buildings, or and I don't know a lot, but if you go to like an old mob video, they would walk into your business and they'd say, I think you need a little protection around here. You pay me this much per week. We make sure nobody breaks your shit. We make sure nobody steals your stuff. And they were extorting businesses, okay? So that being said, literally, I truly do believe that companies like Yellow Page, again, and I'm going to give you guys just a heads up. If you buy a website from somebody, do not allow that company to own your domain name. You should own your own domain name, okay? They can build your website, but when it comes to owning your own domain name, keep that. I have ran into several situations where companies have held people hostage, like, well, you can't really go anywhere because we own your domain name. And then I'll give you guys another, even further example. We had an individual who we had to swap out a couple. He bought the domain names, but he was trying to be honest about it, and he was trying to let people know that he's just going to hold them for them, and if they want them, he'll give them to them, which is a fucking process. I'm just going to tell you guys that. So again, that's another reason why you want to own your domain name. It's a process, it's like a 2-week process to get that domain name swapped over, and you practically got to hire somebody to do it for you, unless you're computer savvy. So again, you want to own your own domain name. And unfortunately, our guy that we're working with is being told that he either has to pay out a $1,500 contract, which I would do it. I mean, yeah, it's his decision, but me, see you later. $1,500, get out of my life. I'm going to chalk it up as my mistake, okay? Or he's going to have to wait the contract out to the end of the year and be in a really crappy website until the end of the year, okay? So, and that being said, we had another guy who was kind of getting upset because I guess some of his clients were coming our way, and we were swapping out domains with him, and he was getting a little prickly about giving up that domain name to the client and giving it over to them so we could put our systems on his domain name. So he was getting a little bit hostile about it. And if it wasn't for me saying, dude, if you keep these guys' domain names, I'm going to publicly blast your ass, I don't think he would have done it. So, you know what I mean? That's something I want you guys to be really careful with when it comes to that. And you got to understand something. When you buy a domain name, you probably should honestly buy it through somebody like GoDaddy. That's going to be your cheapest option for buying a domain name. And GoDaddy is one of the few. You can do it through Google as well. So you can buy domain names through Google and through GoDaddy and only pay to host the domain name. Now, if you go through someplace like Bluehost or GatorHost, they're going to charge you yearly for hosting a website, whether you're using their host or not. So essentially, what I want you guys to remember is your host is like the piece of land your house is built on, okay? So you own your house, right? But if you stop paying your taxes, then the government's going to take your house. Well, that's the same thing as your host. So picture your host as being the land you build your house on. And if you don't pay your taxes or you don't pay their fees, they're going to delete everything that you have, taking your house away from you, okay? So a lot of people get confused about that. They think because they bought a domain name on GoDaddy that's going to host their website. That doesn't. Hosting your website's much more expensive. It takes a lot more data space. See, that data's got to be stored somewhere, and that is your host that's storing that data. And I made a mistake years ago, and I signed up with Bluehost, which I had one of my websites through them. But now I own like so many domain names, but I still have to pay for hosting, even though I do not use their host at all, because it's required. So just give you guys a heads up for that. And it's much easier to work inside GoDaddy. Now, as far as actually using them for a host, so using them to host your website, I do not recommend doing that. Okay, because they're very slow and all that. But when it comes to buying your domain name and storing it somewhere, it's a great place to do that. Google has a good setup as well. Google is a great place to do that as well. So that's a little tech tip at the end of this podcast. But I just want to tell you guys, do not ever do business with a marketing company that wants you to sign a contract with them. Look, if they are good enough at what they do, there will be no contract needed. If they are good enough and they provide you enough value, there is no contract needed, okay? And that is today's new business model. It's really the way that it should be. And unfortunately, we got companies out there that are so shitty now. They are so shitty and they are so bad at what they do. They had to put you on contract years ago and hold you hostage just to get you to use their services, just so you'll continue to use their services. That's an old way of doing business. Stay the fuck away from that business model, okay? So anyhow, guys, that's it. That's all I got to drop on you. Hopefully, I just saved you guys a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of money, especially any of you guys who are maybe thinking about getting into the retail market. I want you guys to realize this. Like, keep this in mind, what I'm saying here today, because you're going to have a lot less problems in the future when you go to actually have something built out for you, okay? So anyhow, guys, we appreciate you. And as usual, I'm going to see you on that next one.